Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. Donald Trump has become the first US president in history to be charged with a crime. He'll be charged in New York over alleged hush money given to a porn star just before the 2016 presidential election. Mr. Trump, who's running again for president, has repeated he's innocent. Nomia Iqbal reports.
After months of speculation, it's now clear. Donald Trump has been charged with a crime. Now he's been indicted, he'll have to go to New York, where he'll be fingerprinted and have his mugshot and DNA taken. He'll then have to enter a plea on the charges before a judge, at which point he will probably be bailed. This case may be the first where criminal charges have been brought, but there are two other big investigations involving the January the 6th Capitol riot and efforts to overturn the 2020 election, and those cases are much more serious.
The Turkish parliament has ratified Finland's membership of the NATO military alliance. Finland ended decades of military non-alignment and decided to join NATO last May, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Here's Frank Gardner.
Finland is going to fit very neatly into NATO's what's called ORBAT, Order of Battle. And really, President Putin has achieved the exact opposite of what he set out to do by invading Ukraine. His aim was to check the expansion of NATO and basically sort of restrain the West. And of course, this has had quite the opposite effect because Finland's got a huge 1,300-kilometre shared border with Russia. It doesn't mean to say that the two states have to now be hostile to each other, but it's a bad day for Moscow, and it'll be a good day for NATO.
Officials in Canada have released a final report into the country's worst ever mass shooting. They called for sweeping changes to end what they described as an epidemic of gender-based domestic violence in Canada. Gabriel Wortman disguised himself as a police officer before shooting dead 22 people in the province of Nova Scotia nearly 3 years ago. The Roman Catholic Church has formally repudiated the so-called doctrine of discovery used by Europeans to legitimise the colonisation of non-Christian territories. The Vatican said that the doctrine was not part of the teaching of the Catholic Church, despite being based on 15th century papal edicts. Bernadette Keogh reports.
The Vatican said the historic documents were manipulated for political purposes by competing colonial powers in order to justify immoral acts against indigenous peoples that were carried out at times without opposition from ecclesiastical authorities. The Canadian Bishops' Conference said it was grateful for the statement. In Canada last year, Pope Francis faced repeated calls to rescind the doctrine. Campaigners drew a direct link between it and decades of 20th century abuse at Catholic-run schools.
BBC News. The Oscar-winning actress Gwyneth Paltrow has won a US lawsuit after being sued over a skiing collision in Utah 7 years ago. The jury ruled that it was in fact the claimant, Terry Sanderson, who was at fault. He's been ordered to pay her a symbolic $1 in damages. Thousands of Israelis have come out in support of controversial plans for judicial reform put forward by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The demonstrators blocked a major highway in Tel Aviv. It's the first major pro-government rally in the city since the overhaul was announced. Israel has seen months of anti-government protests and a general strike. The Media Council of Kenya says 6 journalists have been injured during a third day of anti-government protests around the country. There have been rising concerns over deliberate attacks on media professionals carried out by officials and demonstrators. A total of 25 journalists have been assaulted since the protests started last week. Ferdinand Omondi reports.
In a disturbing video shared by investigative company Africa Uncensored, a masked man in gas masks approaches a black SUV. He appears to smash one of its windows before firing a tear gas canister inside. The man in a checked shirt and blue jeans then walks away and joins uniformed police officers marching next to a water cannon truck. 2 journalists are said to have been injured in that incident, one sustaining a deep cut on his right cheek. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has condemned the increasing attacks on journalists in the line of duty, including armed robberies and being forced to delete protest footage by police.
Hundreds of people in the US city of Nashville have marched to the Tennessee state capitol demanding stricter gun laws following Monday's mass school shooting. Protesters lined the building's hallways and chanted slogans. 6 people, including 3 children, were killed when a former student of the Covenant School opened fire. That's the latest. BBC News.